Well, there are two kinds of evidence which do have a relevance here, or two areas of evidence. One is the department's own previous experience of contracting out work, which didn't reveal the level of skill that we thought was necessary. In our report on the court interpreters service, for example, we highlighted that the department had not been well enough geared up to doing the job. And then, of course, there's your own experience in work and pensions, which, perhaps because it was pioneering, hasn't been an unqualified success in terms of the contracting process.
I think it's probably quite important that I kind of deal with the issue of the work programme, because there have been a few negatives around the work programme in recent weeks that, in my view, are clearly misplaced. The first thing to say about the work programme, and having been out of the DWP for about 5 months, I can only give you kind of clear information up to September, but I don't believe much has changed. First of all, in terms of the work programme, the number of people leaving benefits is exactly on track, or was exactly on track. The issue around the work programme was that, and has been, that it has taken longer for the providers to get to the point where they receive a payment, and that is what has kept the overall level of attainment on the provider side lower than was originally expected. Now, we put in some stretching targets for providers, as I think everyone would wish. The aim is to get them to sweat on our behalf to do the right job for the long-term unemployed and for the taxpayer. And the work programme started actually into a less favourable job market than had been expected. When we did all the forecasting 2 years ago, the OBR was forecasting a growing economy in the first autumn. Actually, we went back into recession. And so in those first few months, things started slower than expected. But even so, the number of people moving off benefits was in line with expectations.
I think
the number of people starting.
We're not trying to explore
the
general principles of the work programme.
But I think it's really important
whether the contracting process has been tested and proved to be one that can be made to work in another area.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the aim that there are some lessons to learn from the contracting process. The biggest challenge, that the noise that has emerged around the contracting process has tended to come from smaller voluntary sector groups. In fact, the work programme is the biggest voluntary sector welfare to work programme this country's ever seen. That there were, at the time when I was in the DWP, well over 150,000 plus people being looked after by the voluntary sector in the work programme. So it is a big voluntary sector programme. We've got some big serious organisations, Salvation Army, the Papworth Trust, Tomorrow's People, delivering really good support to people through the work programme. One of the things that I have sought to do very early in this exercise is say to the voluntary sector across the piece, look, some of the reasons you found your participation in that contracting process frustrating were that actually you needed to be more commercial and we needed to do more to help you form partnerships and access financial support. So one of the very early things I've done is bring in the social investment sector. I've held a number of meetings with people in the social investment sector for whom this is a major opportunity to try and begin to put together voluntary sector groups and social investors, to encourage private and voluntary sector to form partnerships of equals. I don't automatically want to see a prime contractor subcontractor model in this. It may emerge in part, but I want to see partnerships of equals as well, because there are skills to be brought to bear from both private and voluntary sector. But it's also about trying to work with the representative groups to make sure the voluntary sector is quite commercial. I don't think the voluntary sector was commercial enough in its approach to the contracting of the work programme, and I want to work with the representative groups to make sure they are so this time. At the end of the day, what I'm after is a good deal for the taxpayer and for the country in terms of fewer people reoffending, and a value for money project. And I absolutely want the voluntary sector to be part of that, and they're going to work very hard to make sure they are, but they've got to do it on the basis of delivering for us in the same way any provider would have to.
And I think we'll come back to some of that relationship with the voluntary sector in a moment. Before I ask for a couple of supplementary points on this, what about the timetable from here on?
Well, this is a more complicated process than the establishment of the work programme, because we've also got to do some reorganisation within probation trust and within the probation sector. One of the things I considered at the start is, should we simply hive off the trusts as they currently are? The issue I have is I don't think that the state can contract out to any organisation of any status for the management of the most serious offenders. I think it's really important to keep a public protection element to the world that we operate. And I think that public protection operation should be very closely aligned with police, very closely aligned with local authorities, dealing with the most serious offenders. And so, as you'll see, our initial approach proposes that we have a smaller, more specialist, more high expertise, harm and protection of the public focused service, which deals with the MAPA type offenders, the most serious offenders, whilst we focus more on mentoring the lower risk offenders. We need to evolve the current structures so that we are ready to move what we have into the outside world. What we can't do is simply just contract the whole lot out. This is not about saying on one day we'll have a bunch of probation officers, the next day they'll all been sacked and somebody else will be doing the job. We have a duty to supervise offenders in a consistent way, whatever the contracting structure may be. And so what we're building something that will evolve from where we are now to where we're going to be, with continuity of supervision and support as we get towards the new world. And that requires us to do some organisational change before we actually start contracting and bringing in third parties to be partners with the operations that we have.